It began with an idea.
There was an idea.
Well, more specifically, a tweet. The Buffalo Sabres playoff drought has been a source of some of the most memorable, stupid, incredible, and hilarious moments you will ever see as a sports fan. As the years continue to go on, and the list continues to grow and grow, I thought to myself how these moments should somehow be immortalized. Not just for us Sabres fans, but also for the enjoyment of the general NHL. That's where the Drought iceberg comes in. After a long brainstorming period that included countless entries submitted by passionate Sabres fans, I believe I have achieved what I set out to create. Feast your eyes on the Buffalo Sabres Drought iceberg. 10 tiers of some of the most wild and unforgettable events I and many others have witnessed as Sabres fans still somehow watching this team. Over 230 entries on this list, and today we're going to sit here for an hour to talk about the first tier. Yeah, I've got a lot of work ahead of me. I don't know when this is going to be fully completed, but I dream about a day where I can finally rest and watch the sun rise on a grateful universe where this iceberg is fully completed in all of its glory. And I really hope that this upcoming season, which is the 25-26 season, is one where the Sabres make the playoffs. That way entries are not being added along as we go over the next year, but I'm not exactly holding my breath. For anyone that maybe hasn't watched an iceberg before, it goes like this. The subjects that sit at the top of this iceberg are popular moments that every person, or at least Sabres fan, should probably know. And as we go further down the list, we'll get into more niche knowledge. So without further ado, let's get right into this. On to the first tier. Longest playoff drought in NHL history. To kick things off, we'll start with a pretty self-explanatory entry. At the time of this recording, the Buffalo Sabres have currently gone 14 straight years without a single postseason appearance. That is the longest drought in NHL history. It was after the conclusion of the 2021-22 season where the Sabres officially took this title. 11 straight seasons of no playoffs. The Florida Panthers were previously the record holders, missing the playoffs 10 consecutive times from the 2000-2001 season to the 2010-2011 season. Ironically enough, the Sabres' last playoff appearance was in the 2010-2011 season. The tank. This one is pretty self-explanatory. The tank refers to the 2013-14 and 2014-15 seasons where the Buffalo Sabres set themselves up to intentionally lose games and finish with the highest odds of selecting first overall at the draft. After the previous core of Ryan Miller, Thomas Vanek, Jason Pominville, and Derek Roy had slowly been broken up as they had begun their age declines, it lined up fairly well with the next two must-see prospects in hockey in Connor McDavid and Jack Eichel becoming available to be drafted. Then general manager Tim Murray made it his goal to set up the Sabres for long-term success and thought the best way to do it was to tear it all down to the studs and build it back up after acquiring franchise-level talent. These 2 years consisted of many notable moments that we'll talk about as we go down this iceberg, such as unforgettable, forgettable players, trades involving players playing too good, fans rooting against their own team, and so much more. By the end, despite all their efforts to ensure selecting first overall, the Sabres would select second in both the 2014 and 15 drafts, ending up with Sam Reinhart and Jack Eichel and missing out on Aaron Ekblad and Connor McDavid. Was it all worth it? Many would say they'd do it again, myself included, and many others say the tank put the franchise in a spot it's never been able to climb out of. Duane Rant. On January 29th, 2020, Duane Steinel called into the WGR 550 local Buffalo radio station to air out some grievances about the team. The previous night, the Sabres laid an egg against the very not good Ottawa Senators, and for that game, Duane was actually in attendance with his sister. In the wake of that awful loss, Duane decided to call into the radio station the next day with some grievances to air out, with the loss itself being far down the priority list. He listed off multiple events in which we will be covering later in this iceberg, ranging from misspelled names on alumni jerseys, knockoff jerseys being given to alumni to wear, and the organization missing a deadline for an alternate jersey that fans had been wanting to see for years. The full 3-minute and 50-second rant is posted on YouTube for your listening pleasure. If you haven't listened to it before, I highly recommend doing so. It is scathing of the organization, and while it's a little bit of a time capsule given how long ago it took place at this point, it's reflective of a lot of fans' attitudes during the course of this drought.
I don't need a Jerry Jones type of owner. I need an owner who's going to answer to the fans when they misspell names on jerseys and have Chinese knockoffs on alumni. What is going on? What are we doing?
Misspelled alumni names. One of the few bullet points we'll be talking about from the Duane Rant, misspelled alumni names, refers to 2 instances of the Buffalo Sabres misspelling names of their alumni. When the Sabres hosted 90s nights back in 2020, they brought in a bunch of former players that had played for the team during the 1990s. 2 of these players, Dave Andreychuk and Mike Robitaille. And while the jerseys they wore looked gorgeous, the problem was when you turned them around, both of their names were misspelled. Mike Robitaille was missing an I after the A in his last name, and Dave Andreychuk was given a C next to the final K in his name. A very embarrassing instance of the Sabres misspelling something on their jerseys, but spoiler warning, it will not be the last instance of this iceberg talking about misspellings on their jerseys. Chinese knockoff jerseys. Another part of the aforementioned Duane Rant, Chinese knockoff jerseys, refers to an incident that occurred with Sabres legend and former captain of the franchise, Danny Gare. At the annual Sabres turkey drive, Gare was there to assist in collecting turkey donations, but something was a little off. In a tweet that went viral in the Sabres community, the back of Danny Gare's jersey was visible, and it clearly showed that it was not an authentic NHL product, but instead something that was cheaply made by another company. It was quickly labeled as a Chinese knockoff jersey. Between the striping on the jersey, his last name, and the number, you can see 3 different shades of blue and 2 different shades of gold. Considering who Danny Gare is and his significance to the franchise, being a former captain and having his jersey retired and all, it's pretty embarrassing this was what he was wearing for an official team event. Missed Goathead deadline. The final part of the Duane Rant we'll discuss is one that really gave fuel to the fire for the Sabres fan base. The 2019-20 season was the Sabres' celebration of their 50th year as a franchise. Now, if anybody stopped to do the math, knowing that the Sabres' first season was in 1970-71, you'll notice that the year was not their 50th season, but the organization likely decided to do it just in case there was a lockout in the 2020-21 season. For context, the CBA wasn't ratified until July 10th of 2020. With that year being a celebration of their history, many different theme nights were planned. Captain's Night, which celebrated the franchise's greatest leaders, 70s Night, 80s Night, or better known as Odd Night, 2000s Night, a 2010s Night that never took place because of the COVID stoppage, but most notably of all for this entry, 90s Night. Not only were the 1990s full of some of the best seasons in franchise history that many were excited to revisit, everybody had their eyes set on one thing: the Goatheads. It had been announced in August of 2019 that the Sabres would be returning to their original royal blue color for the 2020-21 season. So what was once at the top of fans' wish lists had already been confirmed to come back. The beloved black and reds were now at the top of that list. No announcement had come that a surprise 4th jersey for that season was on the way, but fans still held out hope. The Sabres' expansion brother-in-arms, Vancouver Canucks, had brought back their fan favorite flying skate jersey that same season to celebrate their 50th year. Even if it was just for warm-ups, fans were dying to see the team don their old crest. 90s Night, or I guess 90s Day, more on that in a later entry, was scheduled for January 4th against the Florida Panthers. Fans that arrived in the arena for warm-ups eagerly waited for the team to take the ice. And they did, wearing their normal home jerseys. And then they played the rest of the game in those home jerseys. Okay. Well, at least the people in attendance were treated to a fun 3-2 victory. But, yeah, no Goatheads. Pretty odd, to say the least. It wasn't too long after this that rumors started to pop up about why the team didn't commemorate the Goathead jerseys that day. Now, I couldn't find an official source on this, but it's pretty widely agreed upon that the Sabres wanted to have the team wear the Goathead jerseys, but couldn't. Why, you may ask? Well, they missed the deadline. They missed the goddamn deadline to submit their request for an alternate jersey. You see, much like how the Sabres announced their return to Royal Blue a year before it happened, the Vancouver Canucks announced to their fans back in August of 2018 that they would be bringing back the Flying Skate. It's pretty much assumed that the Sabres somehow didn't think ahead to the fact that they'd be celebrating 90s night eventually, and they didn't declare to the league in time they wanted to wear the Goathead jerseys. The result? Disappointing some, infuriating many, and continuing to show why they are one of the worst-run organizations in sports. Just a quick heads up, we aren't done with 90s night yet. There's quite a bit more to bring up about that train wreck. 8 straight losses. The first losing streak of multiple, which we will be talking about on this iceberg, 8 straight losses refers to the period in November of 2022 where the Sabres lost 8 straight games, all in regulation. This is an important part of the Drought lore because they would end up going on to miss the playoffs by 1 single point that season. Even had they just won 1 more game during the stretch or taken 2 or 3 games to overtime, they would have been finally able to end the drought. 10 straight wins. 10 straight wins refers to the period of November 8th, 2018 to November 27th, 2018, where the Buffalo Sabres won 10 games in a row. This stretch propelled the Sabres into a league best record of 17-6-2. The Sabres, who were fresh off of drafting Rasmus Dahlin first overall and acquiring Jeff Skinner in the summer, who was red hot during this period, everything was looking on the come up. However, of those 10 games, 7 went to overtime or shootout, and during that stretch, the Sabres held the 5th best PDO in the entire NHL. And for those that don't know what that stat means, it's basically a combination of shooting percentage and save percentage, which means the Sabres were getting really goddamn lucky, which is reflective in how the rest of that season went. Despite getting themselves to first place in the NHL, they finished the season 27th overall, 76 points, a final record of 33, 39, and 10, a minus 45 goal differential, and my personal favorite stat, 2 wins in the entire month of March. You might be thinking to yourself, gee, how many teams missed the playoffs after winning 10 games straight? Well, the Sabres were not the first team to do that, but they were the second team to do that. The 2016-17 Philadelphia Flyers won 10 games straight and missed the playoffs. 13 straight losses. Yet another losing streak, this one coming from the 2024-25 season. From the period of November 27th to December 21st, the Sabres lost 13 straight games. The timing of this losing streak being hilarious because they had just come off sweeping the California West Coast trip without Tage Thompson playing a single game for the team. Multiple funny things happened during the course of this drought, in which we'll talk about later in the iceberg, but one moment that I will bring up specifically now is Lindy Ruff saying that he, for the first time in his entire coaching career, was almost lost for words at what he had been seeing through the course of that losing streak. And I'll also bring up that the most Sabres thing to happen, or I guess not happen, during the course of this losing streak was any meaningful move. How many teams in the NHL, if they lost 13 games straight, would fire somebody, trade somebody, waive somebody, do anything in response? The Sabres did nothing. Nobody was waived. Nobody was traded. Nobody was fired. The only roster move during this stretch that was notable was bringing Devin Levi up to start in a game which would be their 10th straight loss against Toronto in Toronto, which, by the way, they just decided to not play their backup goalie James Reimer in a revenge game against his old team in Toronto, in the city of Toronto. Just nobody does it like the Sabres. 18 straight losses. This entry refers to the period of February 25th, 2021 to March 29th, 2021, where the Sabres went 18 straight games without a win. There have been some bad moments throughout the drought, but I think this right here may have been the period where I felt the most alienated from the team ever. I came dangerously close to not watching games during this time, which, considering the type of fan I am, I mean, look at this bullshit that I'm doing right now, is crazy to admit. The Sabres started this losing streak with a record of 6-8-2, which isn't great, but also isn't horrible. And they ended it at 6-23-5. Insane stuff. 13 games into this streak was when they finally decided to relieve Ralph Kruger of his duties and let Don Granato take over. Since there were some overtime losses mixed in, the 18 games is considered a winless streak by the NHL and not a losing streak. So when you go to the longest losing streaks in NHL history page on the NHL stats website, it's under the winless streaks section. It was the longest losing streak since a team went 14 games without a win in 2014-15. Who was that team? Oh, the Buffalo Sabres. Yeah. This won't be the last time we talk about this streak, so this is more of an overview. We'll get more into the nitty-gritty later. Ristolainen runs into the boards. On March 5th, 2020, the Buffalo Sabres and Pittsburgh Penguins were facing off at KeyBank Center. With time winding down, Buffalo was trailing 4-2 and had their net empty, attempting to cut the lead. A Jack Eichel shot would land in front of Penguins defenseman Jack Johnson, who would then fire the puck high and around the glass, attempting to just get the puck out of the zone. Rasmus Ristolainen, who was anticipating the puck being sent his way, quickly started to move over to the boards to block the puck's path. But either seeing it was coming in way hotter than he was anticipating or not seeing the boards approaching, he launches himself into the glass and with a loud clear, hilariously fell to the ice, disappearing from the broadcast camera with only his stick being visible as it flew up into the air. Unfortunately, he did not save the puck from leaving the zone, and it would go down the ice for an icing. I laugh every time I see this clip. It gets better every time you watch it. I love you, Risto. Your effort did not go unnoticed here. I hope you know that. Own goal. Another pretty self-explanatory entry. This one refers to the Sabres scoring on their own net in a game against the Utah Hockey Club this past season while in Utah. Down 3-2 with time winding down, the Sabres drew a delayed penalty with the net empty already. However, Tage Thompson goes to make a pass back to the point to Rasmus Dahlin. It misses Dahlin, goes off the boards, and into their own net. The funniest part of this entry might be that the player that took the penalty was actually the one credited with the goal. Kevin Stenlund was the last one to touch the puck for Utah. And while I can't play the clip, if you listen to the Sabres broadcast of this moment, Rob Ray loses his mind as he's shouting at the Sabres to give Utah the puck because of the delayed penalty. They obviously don't, and Tage Thompson missed the pass, and into the empty net it went. Just a pillar moment of the drought. Buckle. This entry refers to one of the most hilarious goals in NHL history. On December 23rd, 2013, the Buffalo Sabres hosted the Phoenix Coyotes at home. Despite the Sabres being full steam ahead into their first tank season, the game was tied 1-1 and needed either overtime or shootout to be decided. With about 1:20 to go in overtime, Sabres defenseman Mark Pysyk carried the puck into the Coyotes zone and fired a shot on net from the boards. The shot was an easy save for the Coyotes goaltender Mike Smith, but he did not control the rebound very well and it sprung back out into Pysyk's direction. Pysyk had gotten around his defender and went to get a second shot at the rebound. He and Mike Smith both quickly raced for this 50-50 puck, poking it at the exact same time. The puck launched into the air, but when it came down, it disappeared from everyone's sight. Mike Smith quickly got back into his own net, trying to figure out where the puck had gone. Mass confusion ensued. The Sabres players on the ice were signaling that they had scored, but no one had shot the puck into the net. What just happened? Well, this did. Yep, the puck had fallen into Mike Smith's pants on its way down, and Smith, not knowing this, panicked and carried the puck into the back of his own net. The refs reviewed the play and, seeing clearly what had happened, awarded the Sabres the goal and therefore the victory. Arguably the most hilarious way to win a hockey game. Side note, the Coyotes missed the playoffs by just 2 points that season. Buffalo, I'm coming for you. The Sabres, Coyotes, and a handful of other teams were full steam ahead in their tanking efforts for Connor McDavid and Jack Eichel in the 2014-15 season, with the Sabres receiving the most notoriety for their efforts. It seemed like they were destined for either one of the franchise talents. In February of 2015, the 63rd annual Beanpot Tournament was taking place in Boston. For those who may not know, every year, the 4 big Boston hockey schools, Boston University, Boston College, Northeastern University, and Harvard University, compete in a tournament against one another. Jack Eichel's Boston University Terriers defeated the Northeastern University Huskies in overtime to secure the championship that year. After the program's big win, it seemed as if there was a big celebration afterwards. In the wake of this celebration, a series of videos containing noted 18-year-old freshman Jack Eichel having a few alcoholic beverages. I couldn't find the first 2 videos. It seems like they've been scrubbed from the internet, but the first of which was supposedly him telling the camera person to check back with him in 12 hours and see where I am. And then in the second video, he congratulated the camera person for checking back with him before drinking something out of the Beanpot trophy itself. However, the third and most famous one contained Eichel telling this camera person, "Buffalo, I'm coming for ya," before slamming a beer, not exactly looking sober in the process. With this quote taking place 3 months before the actual draft lottery and Buffalo currently in 30th place in the NHL, seemingly being in the driver's seat for the first overall pick at that point in time, it seemed as if Eichel was still under the belief he could beat out McDavid for the first overall selection. Obviously, he did not end up doing so, but his quote would still come to fruition as the Sabres would earn the second overall pick for that year's draft, selecting him. Had things not gone to hell with Eichel over the years, this could have been one of the coldest lines in Buffalo sports history. But alas, a fun memory nonetheless. If we sign this guy, to me, this is the best one. I know we're in the first tier, but I don't think anything else in the drought tops this moment. If we sign this guy refers to a quote from Terry Pagula in a Sabres Embedded episode, that Embedded episode being the one where the Sabres signed Taylor Hall in 2020 free agency, where GM Kevin Adams pulls Terry Pagula into his office to tell him that Taylor Hall might want to sign there, in which Terry Pagula responds with possibly the funniest sentence I have ever heard said during the course of this drought. Just take a listen.
We signed this guy. We're not only trying to make the playoffs, we're trying to win the cup.
Yeah, I mean, this is, yeah.
Gets me every time. Best part of that whole clip is Kevin Adams just going, yeah. Even he couldn't believe what he had just heard. Hudson Fasching kick. This entry refers to the ultra-controversial Hudson Fasching goal from the Sabres-Islanders game on March 7th, 2023. At the time, both the Sabres and the Islanders were fighting for a playoff spot, and this game, which was broadcasted on national television, was going to have huge playoff implications. With the game tied 2-2 in the third period, a shot from the point ricocheted to Hudson Fasching, and that shot ricocheted off his leg into the Sabres net. This goal was originally called no goal by the referees on the ice, as there was believed to be a kicking motion before going to further review, and that ending up being overturned into a good goal on the ice. The Sabres would go on to lose the game 3-2 in regulation, and later that season, they would miss the playoffs by 1 point. This goal has become an infamous part of the drought, making fans wonder what would have happened had this goal been, in my opinion, rightfully overturned and called no goal. Now, look, I will also say the Sabres were being dominated in that game, but it still makes you wonder what might have been. Oh yeah, and by the way, Hudson Fasching, former Sabre, just a little bit more salt in the wound. Meeting in Montreal. With the Sabres suffering yet another horrific losing streak in the 24-25 season, they were setting themselves up for a 14th straight playoff miss, and the noise around the organization was reaching yet another fever pitch. How could an organization that was seemingly the future of the Eastern Conference just 2 years ago be right back to another rock bottom point? That's what a lot of people, including the wider NHL media, were starting to ask themselves once again. 10 straight losses into what was an eventual 13-game losing streak. Word got out via Elliot Friedman that Terry Pegula was on his way to meet with the team in Montreal prior to their matchup against the Canadiens. He had seemingly decided that enough was enough and he needed to come and rally the troops himself. It's not exactly known what was said in this eventual meeting with the players, but the general message was able to be pieced together. Despite the team being among the worst in the NHL and having clearly needed roster additions for a sizable amount of time, the message was largely positive. According to Frank Saravalli, the summary of the message was, "We believe in you. The solution is within this room." Pegula professed his faith in Adams, Ruff, and apparently straight up told the players to not expect a big trade. Kevin Adams also addressed the team and declared that that day was a fresh start for the roster. So after that rousing speech where the players were told no help was coming, the Sabres had to get ready for a game against the Canadiens that night, who, while making the playoffs later that season, were currently 12-16-3, and they were only 1 point ahead of the Sabres for 7th in the division. So, after that amazing speech from their owner, how did the Sabres respond? 19 seconds into the game, Montreal scores. It wouldn't just stop there, though. Patrik Laine would score a hat trick entirely on the power play that game, and the Sabres would get trounced, losing 6-1. An absolute ass-kicking courtesy of the Habs. Objectively one of the worst games of the entire drought I can remember. So yeah, it doesn't seem like that rousing speech ended up motivating the players. Okposo Sex Tweet. Now look, for people that don't know what this refers to, what you might be thinking in your own head, I'm just cool it. All right, cool. Let me explain this one. It's arguably the greatest moment of the drought, and that is not hyperbole. In March of 2017, Kyle Okposo suffered the first of quite a few concussions throughout his Sabres tenure. The actual story of what he experienced during this time is pretty harrowing, and it's not something at all to joke about. He actually went into detail back in 2022 on an episode of Spittin' Chicklets about this time in his life, and I do really recommend listening to it. It's haunting, but also very inspiring. Okposo played his last game of the 2016-17 season on March 27th versus the Florida Panthers. Despite what we know today about how the concussions affected him, Sabres fans were relatively kept in the dark about what was going on with Okposo off the ice, and for a while, fans didn't really know what had happened to him. But he was back to playing for the team in the 2017-18 season, so all seemed fine. In February of 2018, Phil Housley told reporters that Okposo had missed practice that day due to his wife being in labor. He was currently at the hospital with her. The Sabres relayed this message on social media, where they would then proceed to get one of the greatest replies in Twitter history. I'm serious. Okposo's last game last year because of an injury was March 27th. He didn't skate until August. His wife is in labor. 9 months ago was late June, so Kyle could have sex with his wife, but not skate. Sherlock Holmes on the case right here. Clearly, he thought he was onto some sort of conspiracy that Okposo had faked his injury to spend more time with his wife. Anyways, I hope this user who hasn't tweeted since 2018 knows that their comment has not been forgotten by the Sabres community and will forever live on in Drought lore. Palm trees. I'm sure any current NHL fan knows what this one is referring to. After 5 consecutive losses in the wake of sweeping the California West Coast trip, it was beginning to become clear that the 24-25 season was slipping away and that the roster sorely needed help. Fans wanted answers from GM Kevin Adams, as did the media. So, on December 6th, 2024, Adams held a press conference to answer to the media, and oh boy, am I sure he did not expect what was going to come out of this. Among many other things that were said during the press conference, one stood out. After previously remarking that Buffalo was not a destination city, he was asked to elaborate further on how to be able to change that. This is what he said.
When you say that this is not a destination city, I understand where you're coming from with that. When it comes to players who are UFA or players who maybe you're pursuing in a trade that may have Buffalo on a list that they don't want to go to, how do you break through to them or to their agents to say, listen, this is where success can happen for you?
You have to earn it. I mean, look, this for me, it's really simple. You become a perennial playoff team, you make the playoffs, you have a chance to win Stanley Cup year after year, you are on less teams, no trade list. We don't have palm trees, we have taxes in New York, those are real, and those are things you deal with, but, and trust me, I'm in conversations every day, and there's a lot of players in this league that were on their list, so we need to earn the respect.
Yeah, that one wouldn't go over too well with fans. Instead of simply saying the team needed to win to make more players buy in, or perhaps spend a little teeny extra bit of money to get players to sign here, something that they had just done that summer with veteran forward Jason Zucker, Adams attempted to hide behind taxes and palm trees as part of the reason they couldn't get players to sign or waive their clauses for trade. Well, what Adams probably intended as some sort of rallying cry to the fan base against the rest of the league turned into a rallying cry for the fan base against him. As the current losing streak of 5 continued to grow and grow, Sabres fans started to have some fun with the quote. It started online with funny tweets and grew into a much bigger movement that was seen in the arena night after night. People showing up in Hawaiian shirts, flags decorated in vacation attire, and most notably of all, inflatable palm trees, with the occasional paper bag over the head mixed in. Kevin Adams had unintentionally started a movement, and while it peaked during this losing streak and faded as the season went on, palm trees might just be the term that will be most attributed to his tenure as Sabres GM, whenever that may end. Eichel neck surgery. During the aforementioned 18-game losing streak, in a March 7th, 2021 matchup against the New York Islanders, Jack Eichel was protecting the puck along the boards from Islanders forward Casey Cizikas. As Cizikas pinned Eichel up against the boards, he caused Eichel to rotate his neck in an awkward way, and immediately Eichel seemed to be in some sort of discomfort. This would be the last game Eichel would ever play in a Sabres uniform. He would miss the remaining 33 games of that season as he searched for a medical opinion on what turned out to be a slipped disc in his neck. In the days following the injury, Eichel traveled to an independent specialist who recommended he get a procedure that had never been done on an NHL player before: artificial disc replacement surgery. However, no surgical action would be taken yet, as the Sabres wanted Eichel to continue rehabbing until a re-evaluation date in May. They were hoping the injured disc would just move back into place on its own. When the reevaluation date came, it was determined that Eichel still needed surgery. However, the Sabres did not want Eichel to undergo this form of surgery, instead wanting him to undergo a much more common fusion surgery. Eichel wished to do what his specialist had recommended him. Now you may be wondering why Eichel couldn't just go out and get the surgery he desired. Well, at that point in time, the current NHL CBA gave teams the final say on players' injury recoveries. So the Sabres held the final say and therefore all the power. Eichel, growing frustrated, would air out his grievances with the Sabres medical team in his end-of-season press conference with the Buffalo media in May, making this issue very public and signaling an end to his time with the Sabres.
Jack, I guess I'm puzzled, and I'm coming at this from a standpoint of, if I were with my doctor, it's my decision what I want to do. And I guess my question is, if you want surgery or if you don't want surgery, whatever your thought is on that, why don't you just do what you would like to do? It's your body. It's your decision with a doctor.
Doesn't work like that, Paul.
Is it because of a contract?
Yeah, it doesn't work like that. I wish. I mean, yeah, you can't. I guess that's you hit the nail on the head there. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's it. I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm under contract with this team, and they definitely hold a lot of cards on what I can and can't do.
The Sabres would go on to search for a trade partner that summer for Eichel, but there were a few challenges. First off, there were other teams that were wary of the artificial disc replacement surgery, and they also wanted the fusion surgery done. Additionally, agreeing on trade value for an injured Eichel proved to be difficult during that summer. As time went on, it was becoming clear Eichel wasn't going to be ready to start that season, as there was no surgery date planned. On October 21st of that year, according to ESPN, Eichel made his final plea to the Sabres for his surgery preference, still wanting to move on from the team, but also later confirming that he would have been okay playing for the team, boosting his value, and showing teams that he still was 100% post-surgery.
If you allow me to get the surgery, I'll come back and play in Buffalo, and I'll prove to people that I'm healthy. If the issue that you have is you're not getting the proper return because of the injury, then I'll do that.
But the Sabres still stood firm on refusing the artificial disc replacement surgery. Finally, this long and drawn-out saga would come to an end on November 4th when the Vegas Golden Knights traded for Eichel and allowed him to get his desired surgery. Obviously, the surgery turned out to be a major success for Eichel as he would go on to get back to form, win a Stanley Cup, but also it did set a precedent showing that the surgery worked and showed future players that they could be comfortable getting this surgery if need be. Eichel's first return. This entry refers to the first time that Jack Eichel returned to Buffalo after being traded to the Vegas Golden Knights back in November of 2021. Given that the Sabres were currently in the first season of what was basically a second rebuild after trading Jack Eichel and Sam Reinhart and parts of the previous core, there were not a lot of games to look forward to that season, but obviously everybody had this game circled on their calendar. And what was interesting was going to be fan reception to his return. Obviously, the exit had been very drawn out and long and frustrating. It was going to be interesting to see how receptive Sabres fans were to see Eichel in another jersey. The Knights started out well. While there was some light booing when he touched the puck on his first shift, the Sabres played a video tribute, which concluded with Sabres fans giving Eichel a nice ovation. However, that would be far from the end of the night. Peyton Krebs, who was one of the key pieces of the Eichel trade itself, actually opened the scoring for the Sabres. And for the most part of that game, the Sabres held that 1-0 lead. A fluke goal would tie it for Vegas late in the third, but the Sabres would receive a power play with time winding down. On the power play, Victor Olofsson roofed one over the shoulder of the Vegas goaltender, and the Sabres took a 2-1 lead late in regulation. With the net empty and Vegas pushing for the tying goal, the Sabres won a defensive zone faceoff. Henri Jokiharju sent the puck around the boards. Eichel went to his backhand to keep the puck in and tried to shoot it back into the corner. However, the shot deflected off of Alex Tuch's shin pad and would go down the ice, and Alex Tuch would win the race against Eichel for the puck and roof it into the empty net. A pretty cool sequence and an overall storybook game for the Sabres. Both Peyton Krebs and Alex Tuch being instrumental in the Sabres' eventual 3-1 win. However, before the final buzzer did sound, there was another draw in the Sabres' defensive zone, and Eichel was on the ice. As somebody who was in the building, it was at this point Eichel began to hear it from the fans. And then we get to the postgame. Eichel, who had clearly been quite a bit rattled by how the game ended and how the reception was to him, he had some interesting stuff to say to the media and more specifically to the fans of Buffalo.
That's about the loudest I've heard this place ever. Really, after it only took 7 years of me leaving for them to get into the game. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure there was mixed. It was a nice tribute, and there was plenty of people here that were supporting me, and there was plenty of people here that were booing me. So they must just be booing me because they wish I was still here. I don't know. It is what it is. I mean, I'm not the first kid to deal with it, so just move on. And yeah, it was a tough game. Give them credit; they played hard.
While the reception when he first took the ice was mixed and even somewhat positive when they played the video tribute, by the end of the night, Jack Eichel had become public enemy number 1. Eichel's second return. Who doesn't love a sequel? After the previous game in March had ended in storybook fashion for the Sabres and also ended in Jack Eichel becoming the biggest villain in Buffalo, the much anticipated rematch between the Sabres and Golden Knights the next season was going to be another must-watch. The last time he had been in Buffalo, Eichel had gotten a relatively mixed reaction, but now, after his comments post-game, fans were going to be ready to boo him, and that's exactly what they did. The game started as a close contest as the Sabres and Golden Knights traded goals throughout the first 2 periods, but Vegas held a 3-2 lead going into the third. Despite the score, things had been actually going well for the Eichel hate watch as he had not assisted on any goals and had actually been denied on 2 separate breakaways. However, things changed in the third period. Getting a primary assist on Alex Pietrangelo's goal to make it 4-2, the monkey had come off the back of Eichel. Just 3 minutes later, he had gotten a fortunate bounce and the puck landed on his stick. He shoveled it into the net for his first goal and went immediately to the boards with a smirk on his face. That wasn't the end of it, however. Eichel went on to score 2 more goals, a 4-point hat-trick performance in Buffalo. While the previous game had ended in a lot of joy for Sabres fans, the second instance ended in sweet, sweet revenge for Eichel. O'Reilly loses love for the game. This entry refers to one of the more infamous quotes of the drought. After a disastrous 2017-18 season that saw the Sabres go 25-45-12 and once again finishing in last place in the NHL, the third time in the last 5 years, tensions were beginning to boil over with the current core. Jack Eichel was now 3 years into his NHL career, and the team had only gotten worse with every passing season. Once this miserable campaign had concluded, the Sabres gathered for their annual locker cleanouts on April 9th, 2018. When the media made their way over to Ryan O'Reilly, they were probably not expecting him to go into the detail he did about his mental struggles that season. I'll play a few of the big quotes from that presser.
I don't think I was mentally tough enough this year. I think that's something I have to be a lot better at.
Being strong mentally, is that an issue for this team as a whole?
Yeah, I think our mindset is, we're stuck in this mindset of just, being okay with losing. And, I feel it too. I think it's really crept into myself. And over the course of the year, I lost myself a lot. And, where it's just kind of get through, just being the guy, being okay with just not making a mistake. And that's not winning hockey at all, and it's crept in all of our games, and it's disappointing. It's sad. I feel throughout the year I've lost the love of the game multiple times, and just.
Do you need a change of scenery?
Do I?
Yeah, just listening to what you're saying here.
No, I really want to be a part of the solution here. I love this city. I love it here. I call it home, and. There's some good pieces, but it's it's a big change that I think I need to make mentally. I gotta I know I've said this so many times that I've got to be a lot better, and I hate sound like a broken record, but I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to keep trying, and if something happens and I'm moved, then obviously it's a change that they decide to make. But I want to be here. I want to win here because I feel it'd be special here. It's a great city, and they deserve a winning team.
Could you ever have envisioned yourself saying you've lost love with the game, and then just thinking back to being a kid and playing?
Yeah, it's crazy, and it just at different times, and I'm obviously so privileged to be able to play this game professionally, and it's the NHL it's the best job in the world. But I'm just at times throughout the year I felt I've lost it, and there's times where I found my game and I just enjoyed it and it was fun. But when you lose consistently like this for multiple years, it's tough, and winning's. And I find myself winning was one of the things that always just pushing. I just hate to lose, and just with everything that's gone on, it was just kind of in order to cope with it, it was just kind of like, oh, it's all right. As long as I did some things well, it's okay, and that's kind of how I kind of fell out of love with it, and I miss that, and I want to get back to myself.
O'Reilly's honest and vulnerable words were a shock to the entirety of the fan base and the media in the room. While it should have been commended that a player was being as open as he was with the media about why things had gone wrong the previous season, or at the very least people should have understood why being a part of a perennial losing team was taxing on the mind, it just was not received by many that way. O'Reilly saying that losing had become accepted by the locker room and that he had been mentally weak. It became very easy for his detractors to label him as part of the problem and part of the losing culture that had surrounded the organization. Less than 3 months later, he would be shipped off to St. Louis. And well, the rest is history. More on that trade later. Internal cap. This entry refers to the unconfirmed but highly plausible theory that the Sabres have had an internal cap set within their organization since 2020. Back in June of that year, just a month after firing and furloughing many employees of Pegula Sports and Entertainment, and in the wake of a season where the Sabres finished 25th in the NHL despite spending every last dollar to the cap, the Pegulas decided to purge much of the Sabres management and staff to cut costs. We'll actually dive a bit further into that specific day in a later entry. Since that point, however, the Sabres have not come close to spending to the cap ceiling whatsoever. In 2020-21, or better known as the COVID season, they held the 8th most amount of cap space in the NHL. That was despite making one of the biggest signings in the league with Taylor Hall, who was making $8 million that season. In 2021-22, they held the second most. In 22-23, they held the most in the NHL. In 23-24, they held the 4th most. And this past season, in the 24-25 season, they held the 7th most. At the time of this recording, prior to the 25-26 NHL season, they do hold the 13th most, so a little bit of a jump there. But they are still looking to have $5.1 million in cap space heading into potentially year 15 of the playoff drought. Via spot track from the 2021 season to the 2024-25 season, the Sabres have left over $60 million unspent. Now listen, as somebody who does believe in this theory, there are some things that may disprove it. Spending definitely was going to take a hit in the wake of trading players such as Jack Eichel and Sam Reinhart and Rasmus Ristolainen. However, once the team missed the playoffs by a single point in the 22-23 season, there was really no excuse not to go out and raise their spending numbers. Obviously that didn't happen, and we're still here today. Now, until we hear otherwise, it is just unconfirmed conjecture, but until the Sabres max out their cap, it's going to continue to persist. Lucic runs Miller. This entry might be the single most infamous of the entire drought. It is looked at by many Sabres fans as the symbolic end of the previous core's playoff window and the official start of the playoff drought. On November 11th, 2011, the Buffalo Sabres traveled to TD Garden to take on the defending Stanley Cup champions, Boston Bruins. With about 6:50 remaining in the first period, Milan Lucic would block a shot from Thomas Vanek at the point and spring himself onto a partial breakaway. However, Lucic didn't corral the puck smoothly enough on his first touch and accidentally pushed it out of his own reach. Ryan Miller, seeing that the puck had gone too far ahead of him, came out of his crease to try and fire the puck away before Lucic could regain it. Miller would win the race and shoot the puck out of harm's way, but Lucic did not stray his path. He braced himself for contact and then barrels through Ryan Miller, sending him and his helmet flying. An intentionally dirty and gutless play by Lucic. However, despite seeing their franchise goaltender laying on the ice without a helmet on and one of the league's most hated players standing over him, the Sabres' response was beyond pitiful. Sabres captain Jason Pominville, assistant captain Thomas Vanek, veteran leader who was no stranger to fighting Paul Goathead, 6'8" Tyler Myers, and veteran Andrei Sekera hardly went after Lucic at all. A brief scrum would ensue after the hit, but Lucic went to the penalty box to serve his 2-minute penalty unscathed. A spineless reaction from the Sabres that were on the ice. Miller would actually stay in the game for the remainder of the first and second period, but would be removed before the start of the third. Turns out he had been concussed. Shocker, I know. It also came as a shock to Milan Lucic. He could not fathom how this resulted in a concussion. Despite leading the game 1-0 when Miller went down, the Sabres were trounced for the remainder of the contest, losing 6-2. Famously, Ryan Miller had some choice words for Lucic in his post-game interview.
I'm not going to really get into that. I just stuck around because I just want to say that piece of shit I think Lucic is. 50 pounds on me and runs me like that. It's unbelievable. Everyone in the city sees him as a big, tough, solid player. I respected him for how hard he played. That was gutless. Gutless. Piece of shit.
Just an all-around horrible night for the Sabres. Losing the game, their franchise goaltender to injury, but maybe most importantly of all, their respect around the league. Many will say they have not gained it back since.
Were you surprised if no one else would have retaliated?
A little bit. Yeah.